The Japanese used Eastern trickery in building their aircraft carriers. Already in the mid-noughties of this century, it became clear to many politicians that the world formed after the end of World War II and the collapse of the USSR would be transformed shortly. Russia craved revenge. North Korea acquired nuclear weapons, and China was rapidly becoming an economic giant, a superpower. Its army of 2 million men was the largest in the world. The country was actively building state-of-the-art missiles, aircraft, and surface and submarine ships. Of course, Japan, which has had many conflicts with China in its history, could not simply watch as its western neighbor grew more and more powerful, and the Japanese began to fight back. One of them is the rising sun country's emergence of aircraft carriers, for the first time since the end of World War II. In this video, we'll talk about these ships, and at the same time about the eastern cunning the Japanese have demonstrated. So keep watching. It'll be interesting. Japan is forbidden to have an offensive army at its disposal. This is written in the Act of Surrender of 1945. And so Japan has no right to build aircraft carriers, which are considered to be exclusively offensive weapons, although there is no official division between offensive and defensive weapons. But Japan is allowed to have a self-defense force to defend the country against external aggression. But as we said above, the rapid strengthening of China could not help but puzzle and perhaps even frighten the Japanese authorities. The successors of the samurai realized that it was necessary to arm themselves, including aircraft carriers. After all, such armaments make it possible to fight the enemy far away from their territory. So why then consider aircraft carriers an offensive weapon? They're defensive too. But not to irritate China, the Japanese Ministry of Defense announced the construction of a flat-top destroyer on November 23, 2009. In 2011, 1H1 Marine United was awarded the contract to build the flagship at a cost of 113.9 billion yen, which was $1.3 billion at the time. The official groundbreaking ceremony for the project was held on January 27, 2012 at the shipyard in Yokohama. In October 2012, 1H1 Marine United was awarded the contract for the construction of the second hull of the same type, with planned commissioning in 2017. The first ship, named Izumo after the Japanese cruiser that took part in the Battle of Tsushima in 1905, where the Russian 2nd Pacific Fleet was nearly destroyed, was launched on January 27, 2012. The public viewing took place on August 6, 2013, with officials noting that the coincidence with the 68th anniversary of the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima was purely coincidental. The built ship could carry up to 14 helicopters on board, and according to official statements, it'll be primarily intended for rescue and search operations, as well as patrolling territorial waters and protecting Japanese sovereignty. Izumo has a total displacement of 27,000 tons. It's 814 feet long, 125 feet wide, 24.5 feet draft, and 77 feet high. The engine's a combined gas turbine unit, including 4 General Electric LM2500 turbines. The total power output is 112,000 horsepower. This allows the ship to reach a power of 30 knots. The crew is 470. The same number of troops can be accommodated. In addition to 14 helicopters, Izumo is armed with 2 6-barreled Mark 15 Phalanx Seawiz 20mm automatic anti-aircraft guns and 2 REM 116 surface-to-air missile launchers with 11-cell CRAM missiles. On August 27, 2015, the second ship of this type was launched, which was named Kaga. They were officially commissioned into the Japanese Self-Defense Forces on March 25, 2015 and March 22, 2017, respectively. And then began what has been the goal of the ship's construction since the beginning. In 2018, the Japanese government approved the country's Naval Development Program, which involves upgrading one of the project's helicopter carriers into a light aircraft carrier to be based on the Lockheed Martin F-35B deck-based fighters. This upgrade began at Izumo in March 2020 and was completed by the middle of July 2021. The ship's landing and air traffic control systems and power supply equipment were upgraded, and the flight deck was heat-coated and marked accordingly. The cost of the work was 3.1 billion yen, or $28 million. And on October 3rd of the same year, 2021, a historic event for Japan occurred. For the first time since the end of World War II, an aircraft landed on the deck of an aircraft carrier. It was the Lockheed Martin F-35B Lightning II 5th-generation short takeoff and vertical landing fighter from the 242nd Fighter Attack Squadron of the U.S. Marine Air Corps. But this is only the first phase of the upgrade. If the results of Izumo's operation as an aircraft carrier prove positive, the second stage of modernization will follow in 2025. It involves changing the shape of the ship's bow to enlarge it, as well as installing the JPOW's electro-optical landing system and a complete refit of the hangar, elevators, fuel, weapons, and spare parts storage that'll enable the F-35B to be fully based. The second helicopter carrier in the series, the Kaga, will also be fully modernized during this phase. 16 F-35B fighters will be placed on each of the carriers. Earlier, Japan's self-defense forces expressed their desire to purchase 42 such aircraft of the latest version Block 4 from the USA. 32 fighters on aircraft carriers and 10 more will be based on the shore. Nyudabaru Air Base in Miyazaki Prefecture, Kyushu Island, in southwestern Japan has been selected to house these aircraft. 6 F-35B fighters are scheduled to be deployed in the fiscal year 2024 and 2 more in 2025. Of course, in the most important technical characteristics, the F-35B is inferior to the full-fledged F-35C deck fighter aircraft carriers of the United States. For example, its combat range is 518 miles, while the F-35C has 708 miles. The same picture with the combat payload, 15,000 pounds versus 18,000 pounds. But the Japanese cannot do otherwise because of the relatively small size of the Izumo and Kaga. They're not supposed to have catapults or ramps. That is, they can only accommodate aircraft with short takeoff and vertical landings. Already from June 13th to October 28th, 2022, Japan held naval exercises in the Indo-Pacific region, which were attended by the new aircraft carrier Izumo. It's reported that the Japanese military was satisfied with them. With this upgrade, the Izumo and Kaga will be able to strike enemy positions to a depth of 580 miles, much to the dismay of China and North Korea. Of course, Japan's 2 aircraft carriers with 32 planes aboard are inferior to China's power in this area. The Celestial Empire has 3 aircraft carriers, Liaoning, Shandong, and Fujian, of 70,500, 70,000, and 80,000 tons, respectively, with a total of about 120 aircraft. But this is better than nothing. In addition, the defense strategy for the Japanese islands assumes that, in addition to the Japanese self-defense forces, the American and British armed forces will take part in it. And this is a qualitatively different situation. After all, the Americans have 10 aircraft carriers, including the newest John F. Kennedy, which is called a super aircraft carrier with a displacement of 100,000 tons and can accommodate up to 90 aircraft. The British cannot boast such a fleet. It has only 2 aircraft carriers, Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales, launched in 2017 and 2019. Each has a displacement of 70,600 tons. Their main armament is 50 F-35B fighters each, so with this U.S. English aid, Japan with its 2 aircraft carriers can give a decent response to China and North Korea. Of course, one wishes that all these hundreds of thousands of tons of lethal steel and electronics were used only in exercises, because if they go into real combat, it'll mean that World War III has begun and human civilization risks disappearing or being set back centuries when people sailed and fired copper cannons with 10-pound cannonballs. What do you think about the increased militarization of countries? Write about it in your comments and give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. That'd be the best reward for us. If you don't want to miss new interesting videos about new weapons, subscribe to our channel by clicking the bell. See you soon.